Always two there are, a master and an apprentice, no more, no less. These wise words uttered by Grandmaster Yoda in The Phantom Menace could not have been more true. For every apprentice, no matter how powerful, they always had a teacher to guide them on this path to power. For Yoda it was Nakar Del Gormo. For Vitiate it was Marka Ragnos, for Palpatine it was Plagueis, and for Vader it was Palpatine. Nearly every single great Sith Lord and Jedi alike have always had a master, since the Force was definitely ingrained within certain species and beings from the very founding of time itself. By the omnipotent gods that remain veiled in confusion, that we here at the channel attempt to uncover. However, there has been a multitude of Sith Lords who regularly outclass their light side acolytes and counterparts in the Jedi, and today we are going to be exploring one of the most powerful of these beings, this one Sith, who took the galaxy by storm, slaughtered hundreds of Jedi, lived on for centuries after his death, and went on to train Exar Kun, one of the most powerful and masterful of all Dark Lords. This man was known as Freedon, Nadd, an Old Republic Jedi prodigy whose conscious decision to embrace the dark side of the Force has had significant tremors echo throughout galactic events for many generations and centuries after his death. Nadd's career began as a student in training on the planet of Ossus, but a lust and determination to gain greater power caused him to accidentally slay his master, Matar Tremaine, and renounce his affiliation with the Jedi Order after falling briefly to the dark side. He fled Ossus and made his way into the very heart of the old Sith Empire, where he gained an enormous wealth and amassed and garnered an enormous amount of dark side knowledge and mastery over the power of the dark side. He eventually followed the Force to the jungle moon of Yavin 4, where he found and apprenticed himself to ancient Dark Lord of the Sith Naga Sadow, who had recently been murdered in the Great Hyperspace War. Naga Sadow had preserved himself in stasis, allowing him to live for 6 centuries. Naga Sadow's cataclysmic defeat at the Great Hyperspace War had him flee to Yavin 4. On Yavin 4, he secluded himself in stasis, building various temples to his honor. And then, finally, he suspended himself in animation until a final acolyte of true dark side power could come to usurp his rule. Sadow began to train Nadd in the Sith arts and alchemy and magic, and led the young Jedi even further down to the dark path. When he determined and deduced that he had learned all his Sith master had to offer at the time, Nadd used his newfound powers to utterly obliterate Sadow, and left Yavin 4 behind in search of a world to conquer as his own. He proclaimed himself as the Dark Lord of the Sith, and used his sorcerous powers to subjugate the world of Ondron, where he ruled as a king of the capital of Isis for more than a century, until his ultimate physical demise. His body was eventually entombed below the royal palace of Isis, which became a focal point of Sith power and dark side knowledge. Nadd's spirit lingered in his tomb, from whence it taught the descendants of his bloodline, and further steeped Ondron in the miasma that was the dark side of the Force. By the year 4000 BBY, the exhalation of Freedon and Nadd's memory was a catalyst for the final battles of the century-spanning Beast Wars of Ondron, a conflict that eventually arose between the citizens of Isis, who worshipped the deceased Dark Lord as a god, and those who had been cast out for their refusal to pledge allegiance to the Sith. A battalion and team of Jedi Knights, led by Arcanian Master Akar Jeth, came into Ondron, ending the battle definitively, and brought a temporary halt to Nadd's overwhelming influence over the planet with the defeat of Queen Anamoa. However, Anamoa's husband, King Onomin, reassured and reasserted Sith influence over the planet when he summoned Freedon and Nadd's spirit from the very void of chaos itself, something I really hope to make a video about. The restored Nadd's cult then rose up in arms, stealing and robbing the Dark Lord's sarcophagus in a surprise attack during Amanoa's funeral. Nadd revealed himself to the Jedi and participated in the capture of Akar Jeth, was ultimately rescued by the Jedi after the defeat of King Omenin during the final stages of the Naddis insurrection. Conceding failure, Nadd abandoned Onimin to the mercy of the Jedi itself, and his spirit was forever banished from Orodon by the power of Akar Jeth, forcing him from the homeworld he had spent over a century ruling. Prior to his departure, however, Nadd happened upon Tetan socialists, Al-Nima and Satal Kal-Wal, who had come to Ondron in search of more dark-side knowledge, and chose to pass the Sith teachings on to them. While Nadd's tomb was relocated to Ondron's jungle moon by the Jedi, his spirit appeared to one of them, Ulic Keldroma, and foretold the young knight's destiny as a Dark Lord of the Sith, predicting the future once again. For months, Freedon Nadd trained Ketos in Sith magic and alchemy, but his interest suddenly shifted when Exar Kun, a powerful fallen Jedi with dark side curiosities, stirred the Dark Lord's spirit from within his lunar tomb. Nadd guided Kun to the ancient Sith homeworld of Horrorban, where, through a series of trials and brutal tests designed to test his resolve and his strength in the Force, he decided that Exar Kun was worthy of Sith apprenticeship. Nadd then led Kun to embrace the ancient dwellings of his own Sith master on Yavin 4, and was pleased when Kun wholeheartedly embraced the Sith after he defeated a gargantuan Sith worm and subjugated the native Masasai warriors, the warrior caste of the Sith. Finally convinced that his apprentice had become one with the dark side, Nadd revealed his need for Exar Kun to create a physical body for him through various alchemical and magical means, using sorcerosity and sorcery as well as Sith alchemy in order to manifest a body that Freedon Nadd could inhabit, so that he could once again command the power of the Force. Kun, however, refused to entertain Nadd any longer, and in the moment betrayed him. His apprentice's strength tremendously amplified by a Sith amulet that would come to be known as the Sith Amulet. Nadd was attacked by Kun for a powerful and potent blast of Force energy that mortally wounded the Sith spirit, consigned to oblivion for a second time. Nadd contacted Ketos in his final act, and warned them of the threat posed by Exar Kun. He then declared that, along with Ulic Qel-Droma, the future of the Sith rested with Thethal and Anima, before fading into chaos and dying a second and final death. So, my friend, from this holocron, we can clearly see that Freedon Nadd was a very formidable being who shaped the events of galactic history. He insinuated Exar Kun, one of the most powerful Dark Lords and greatest lightsaber duelists in history, and began his work as a Jedi Knight, killing his own master. It is clear that he still ripples through galactic history. However, how powerful was this ancient Sith? Freedon Nadd was a scholar of the Force and impressed the Jedi Masters on Ossus with his ability to effortlessly manhandle it. Even prior to his beginning Jedi training, Nadd displayed the capability to wield a multitude of powers the Jedi Masters themselves commanded, and more. His teachers believed such intuitiveness would surely see Nadd sit among them, far sooner than any student that had ever preceded them. His skill with the lightsaber was just barely on par with that of his master, Mata Tremaine, who Nadd was still able to murder, though only after Tremaine refused to defend herself any longer. The murder of Master Tremaine, combined with a lust for power, ultimately culminated in Freedon Nadd to the dark side, where he gained access to more violent and corrupting uses of the Force, including holocrons of ancient Sith kings and purebloods like his King Adas, and the creator of Essence Transfer Dark Endedu, comprised his initial knowledge base, and further study under Naga Sadow saw Nadd become an absolute master and god of Sith sorcery on par with Sadow himself, though perhaps slightly weaker. Sith magic was the means by which Nadd eliminated Sadow when the Dark Lord was no longer of any use to him, and was also the power Nadd called upon himself to aid him in his conquests on Alderaan. The Dark Lord recorded a totality and holocron of his knowledge within his own holocron, a device that would contribute to the tutelage of Sith apprentice Darth Zana some 3,000 years later in the Bainite era. Also within Nadd's holocron was extensive knowledge regarding orbless paralites of Dixun, crustaceans that fed on the power of the dark side of the Force, that would ultimately come to torment and augment Darth Bane's own physical connection to the Force and the dark side, feeding on his dark side attunement, allowing him to become more and more powerful than nearly anyone in history. Despite his sickly appearance, Nadd was still a force to be reckoned with. Countless, if not hundreds, of Jedi fell in battle to his short, bronze-bladed lightsaber, and many more were decimated with his personal blaster. Nadd's very occupation of Alderaan infected its atmosphere with the dark side so completely that the planet remained under its pull even after Nadd's physical demise and his spirit lingering in his tomb. Both his own sarcophagus and tomb became focal points and intermediaries of dark side energies, and radiated so potently that Force-sensitive beings within close proximity were immediately affected by Nadd's lingering influence. Darksiders became empowered, while followers of the light stifled in the Force, as they being smoothed by the dark side and entranced by it. When confronted by the power of Akar-Jeth, Nadd's influence was still unable to endure the Jedi Master's presence and was driven from Isis temporarily. Unlike his future apprentice, when Nadd was confronted by the Masasai, he was powerful enough to fight and hold them off until he was deemed worthy of Naga Sadow's consideration for apprenticeship. Nadd's spirit retained a measure of power that he commanded in life, and continued to immensely exert influence over his descendants and peers, who maintained dominion over Alderaan in Nadd's name even after his physical demise, and he was reduced to a mere husk, a spirit of the Sith. The Dark Lord spirit came and went as it pleased, even being able to move across the galaxy from one celestial host to another. Nadd was gifted with foresight, evidenced by his predictions about the men that both Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma would eventually become as Dark Lords of the Sith. He was able to grasp through the Force to attack adversaries with the dark side in potent psychic blast, an ability he used to prevent Vader Sparse from interfering in the corruption of Exar Kun and possibly entrancing him back to the light. Nadd was gifted with the Force healing ability, an act which he engaged in to further convince Exar Kun of the dark side's superiority. In the end, it was Exar, his own apprentice, who put an end to Freedon and Nadd's spirit once and for all. However, after he assaulted the Dark Lord with a blast of Force energy, that his spirit, an apparition, was unable to withstand. Well, my acolytes, what did you think of this video? Did you enjoy this breakdown on Freedon Nadd, one of the most influential and powerful ancient Dark Lords, on par with the being like Naga Sadow, who was literally able to wrench fire from the stars with the aid of his Sith Corsair? Goodbye, my acolytes. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Grab your temple guards, as we are in the presence of true masters.